Many people try to make it seem like motivation and discipline is so easy. Well, if that was true, we still would have Blockbuster. Yes, one of our favorite childhood stores growing up actually shut down because they did not understand how to play the game of motivation and discipline. As crazy as that may sound. And I know some people are probably like, no, wasn't Blockbuster taken over by the streaming services and Netflix? To a certain extent, you kind of are right, but they actually started to topple down and they actually started to crumble before a lot of these streaming services and other companies became big. But how is that possible if they were first the biggest company? There were literally blockbusters everywhere. Well, in this video, I'm going to explain that to you, how they essentially played the game wrong when it came to motivation and discipline, and how oftentimes you are playing the game wrong too. And that's why you're not able to achieve your goals, dreams, and aspirations. That's why you can't stay consistent. That's why you can't stay disciplined, because you do not understand how to play the game of discipline and motivation. So let's get straight into the video. Now, first, I'm going to talk a little bit about Blockbuster and just their start for anybody that's not aware of them. Blockbuster started in the 80s and they were a TV rental store. So essentially, this is before streaming services, obviously. After movies used to come out in the movie theater, we used to go to a place called Blockbuster, and that's where you would rent CDs and DVDs of TV shows, movies. You even could rent video games. It's kind of like a library, I guess, to a certain extent, but you just pay for it. You rent them for a certain amount of time and you bring them back. And they were a big company. They did have competition depending on where you lived, but for the most part, they were the biggest company and they were all over America. Now, they were really big when I was growing up in the early 2000s. In the late 90s, a company called Netflix was created. And it's crazy enough, Netflix actually asked to be bought by Blockbuster, and Blockbuster said no. This is because Blockbuster's whole intent was to open the most stores and sell the most CDs and DVDs inside of their stores. But Netflix was a little bit different. Netflix essentially used to ship CDs and DVDs to your home, and that was how they wanted to start their company. Their whole idea of their goal was to entertain the American people as best as possible and as much as possible. And Blockbuster kind of felt like, well, we're not going to acquire you because, and they literally were like, Americans enjoy the process of getting in their car, going to the store, physically getting a CD and a DVD, taking it home, renting it, and then bringing it back. In my opinion, they put a little bit of a pedestal on us, higher than it should be, but they were just like, the American people enjoy that process. The American people want to go to stores. They're never not going to want to go to a store. They don't want things just shipped to their home. And so they did not buy Netflix. Now, I know some people are probably going to be like, well, once they saw Netflix doing well, why didn't they just transition, right? Because that makes common sense. Blockbuster was the bigger company. They were more known. Why wouldn't they just kind of essentially copy what Netflix was doing or do something better? Well, it's because they were playing two different games and Blockbuster didn't understand that. In life, when you are trying to achieve anything or do anything, especially when it comes to goals and especially when it comes to business, honestly, too, there are two games that you are playing. You are either playing a finite game or you are playing an infinite game. And I'm going to explain which company was playing which, and I'm going to explain how each game is played. So when you are playing a finite game, the rules are there's a clear end goal. The rules are specific. The individuals playing are specific. You know everybody that's playing. And also there is a specific winner, right? There's a winner of the game. And so if you think about if you think about a finite game, you think about Una. For the most part, there's a beginning, there's an end. You know the person who won in, the first person that says Uno out. And most of the time, the rules are always the same unless you're with somebody that changes them. Nonetheless, that is a finite game. And that is the game that Blockbuster was playing, right? Their whole goal, their clear endpoint was to sell the most CDs and DVDs and to have the most stores. And that is how they considered themselves to be a winner. On the other end of the spectrum, Netflix was playing something called an infinite game. An infinite game is literally the opposite. The infinite game does not have a winner. The infinite game players and variables and rules are often interchangeable and constantly changing and evolving. And also, the whole point of the infinite game is to stay in the game as long as possible, contrary to the finite game, which has a clear endpoint. Now, the infinite game example you can think about is something like the healthcare system, right? The healthcare system is something that's constantly changing, it's evolving. It's something that I think is never going to go away. It's something that's going to constantly, improve. And also there isn't really a winner in the healthcare game. Yes, there can be an individual who, finds the cure to cancer, finds the cure to Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, but there's always going to be new advancements. And the whole point of the healthcare system is to stay in the healthcare, to help healthcare essentially. And so that is the game that Netflix was playing, because Netflix's whole intent was to entertain the American people. And so this is why Blockbuster honestly kind of removed themselves from the entire industry before Netflix even got big, because their whole point of playing this game of being inside of business was to do what? Have the most stores and sell the most CDs and DVDs. When other competition started, instead of saying, hey, we need to pivot, hey, we see other companies doing this and doing that, we need to start doing this and doing that, they kept trying to hammer down on what wasn't working. They kept trying to hammer down on opening more stores. They kept trying to hammer down on selling more CDs and DVDs the way people did not want them. Why? Because they were playing a finite game. And like I said, a finite game has specific rules. You cannot change the rules in a finite game and say, well, we should start selling CDs and DVDs through the mail, or we should start a streaming service. No, you have to stick to the game. So eventually, I look at it like this. It's kind of like a snake eating itself. I know that analogy was kind of nasty. I don't know if you guys ever seen like that before, but essentially they ate themselves. They kept going around in the circle, and eventually they didn't realize they needed to stop. Eventually they didn't realize the thing that they kept doing actually led to their demise. And that's why I said it wasn't necessarily the streaming services that made them have a downfall. It wasn't necessarily Netflix. It was because they did not allow themselves to pivot. It was because they had a specific goal of being a winner. And when they were not that winner anymore, they did not have the motivation and the discipline to stay inside the game. So I know at this point, many of y'all are kind of like, well, what does that have to do with me? Like, what does that have to do with my motivation, discipline of me not attaining my goals? Well, it's actually the very same thing. We have finite goals and we have infinite goals. And I think a problem that most people have is they have too many finite goals. And personally, I don't even really think finite goals are real. And the reason why is because, going back to how I described them, finite goals have what? A clear endpoint, and they have a winner. With anything that you want to achieve in life, I personally don't feel like you can always be a winner. Like, I can be the #1 content creator next month, right? I can get all my videos hit 1 million views. I get all these millions of followers. Eventually, there's going to be someone that comes, possibly either the next month or possibly the next year or 2 years later, and they're going to be the next big content creator. When it comes to getting the best body, right? There's always going to be someone with a better body than you. But then also at the same time too, there's always going to be a different variation of yourself with a different body. And if you're so bent up on having a certain kind of body, if you're so bent up of achieving a certain specific thing, like I said, in a specific amount of time, being specific amount of rules, it's going to be hard for you to sustain that thing. And also, a lot of people don't understand the fact that your goals are so finite. That's why it's really hard for you to stick to them, because life is not finite. Life is always changing. There's always different variables that you're going to have in life. And very similar to how Blockbuster could not keep open because they literally would not allow their rules to be changed. A lot of people don't know themselves is the same thing that happens. That's why they can't achieve their goals, right? What happens to you is you wake up in the morning, it's snowing outside. You said you were going to go to the gym, but you're like, well, I can't go to the gym because it's snowing, so I'm not going to the gym. Because that's the only way you see yourself being healthy. Instead of saying, hey, you know what? Let me just do this 10-minute workout. Let me look on YouTube, or let me do some push-ups, or let me do something else. Let me, going back to infinite game, let me adjust my playbook. Let me change things a little bit. No, you don't think you can do that because you have finite game goals. But another reason why I think a lot of people don't stick to their goals, whether they realize it or not, if you have too many finite goals, specific things you want to achieve, I want to lose a certain amount of weight, I want to make a certain amount of money, I want to do, there's specific things you want to achieve that follow the finite game playbook. I think it's very hard for you to sustain those things if you don't have infinite goals, because it's going to be like, what's the point? For example, someone can say, I have a finite goal of losing a certain amount of weight, right? I want to be healthy so I can lose a certain amount of weight. And honestly, let's not even say lose a certain amount of weight. I want to be healthier so I can live longer. And hearing that, most people would say, oh, that's good. That's a good reason to want to be healthy so you can live longer. But if you do not have an infinite goal, right? Something that you truly believe in, something you're going to keep going for, something that you're literally doing that thing simply just to do that thing. Very similar to Netflix. They're entertaining simply just to entertain people. That's what they want to keep doing and evolving with. What is the point of living a longer life if you don't enjoy the life that you have now? Or you're working out because you want to live a longer life, right? That's your finite goal. But you don't have any infinite goals. So I'm like, let's just be honest. You say I want to live longer, but for what reason? There's nothing that you care about. There's nothing that you feel like it's worth being consistent for. There's nothing you feel like in life there's worth sacrificing for or fighting for. So what is the point of you living longer just to say you were older? Another thing, a lot of people like saying, oh yeah, I want to make a certain amount of money and I want to open this business to make a certain amount of money, because a lot of times how finite things go, right? You want to do this to achieve that, right? Okay. What do you want to spend money on? A lot of people want to make more money so they can put more money in other people's pockets. Oh, so I can buy this, so I can buy that, so I can do this, so I can do that. To a certain extent, spend your money. I'm not saying don't, but at the same time, a reason why it's so hard for you to make money is because your whole goal of making more money is just to put more money in other people's pockets. There is no infinite goal that you have. There isn't this thing that's keeping you going and keeping you get what I'm saying? It's this thing that you're attaching to everything else. So at this point, I think a lot of you guys probably like, okay, I want infinite goals. I want things in life where I want to go after them. I want things in life that I want to achieve and I don't want to stop and all these other things. But how do I essentially get infinite goals? Because I often say finite goals once you get an infinite goal. Finite goals come once you get an infinite goal. Once you have something that you're consistently going after, you consistently achieve, it's just like putting notches on your belt. Very similar to Netflix, right? They had the goal of entertaining people, and then they added the other streaming services, and then they added the games, and then they added all these other things. It was because they stayed focused on what was their main goal, and everything else came along with it. So now I'm going to explain to you the 5 steps necessary that you have to learn to essentially achieve or to make sure that you are going after your finite goals. Disclaimer, this is from the author by the name Simon Sinek. And when he created this was for CEOs, business owners, different things like that. So the vocabulary is a little bit businessy, but of course I will translate it so it can be personal for you. So let's start. So the first thing that you need to play the infinite game is to have a just cause. You have to have a cause that you are doing this thing for. And this is kind of similar to your why, but I think it's a little bit deeper. And a question I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about what is my just cause? Like, what is this thing, the cause that I'm doing this thing for? Ask yourself, why would I sacrifice for this thing? I think with anything in life that's worth having, that's worth obtaining, you have to sacrifice, whether it's time, whether it's energy, whether it's money. And sometimes it's easier than you think to sacrifice, right? When you feel like, oh, well, I'm just doing this because it's the good thing to do. And I'm just doing this going back to my finite goals. But I think a question a lot of people need to answer to themselves: why would you sacrifice for this thing? Why is this thing so important that you would sacrifice for this thing? I think that's a question that you need to ask yourself. And another question you possibly can ask yourself is, what would the world look like, or what would my world look like if I didn't do this thing? And I think that often helps people too, especially for me when it comes to this channel, when it comes to building my brand. The reason why I do this is indebted to a life that I possibly wanted growing up, things that I wish I knew, things that I wish my mother even knew growing up, that I felt like would have made my life different in a way. I don't want to say better because I don't know what a better life would have looked like, but I just wish there were resources out there. I wish there were things out there. And that's eventually what I want to build, because I don't want people to go through what my mom went through when she had me at a young age. I don't want people to go through what I went through being the child of, a mom that had her at a young age. Different things like that. So my cause, I should say, is deeper than me. My cause is deeper than me just saying this is something that I want to do. It's saying because I'm thinking about what the world would look like, what my world would look like if I did not do this thing. And it does not have to always intertwine other people. I don't want you to think that it does. Sometimes it helps you, sometimes it doesn't, but just at the end of the day, thinking about what will my world look like if you did not get this thing, if you did not achieve this thing, if you keep living the life that you're living now, what would your life look like? The next one you need to play the game is courageous leadership. This one is imperative, and I think about this as be willing to act like the people that you put upon a pedestal. It's so crazy because there's a lot of people we put on pedestals, whether it's because they got a degree, whether it's because they are a famous person, whether it's because they're a socialite, an influencer. There's so many people that we put upon pedestals. There literally could be a video of someone digging out their wedgie. Somebody secretly recorded them, they digging out their wedgie, and everybody would comment, oh, she's dirty, or she's nasty. You literally just sneezed in your hand and wiped it on your shirt. Like, come on now. But it's so easy to put other individuals on a pedestal. And so when you are going after that just cause, I think to really know that it's a just cause and going back to the sacrifice, you're ready to have courageous leadership. You're ready to do things sometimes for that thing, not only that you don't want to do, but that you know is the best thing to do. The thing that if you were looking at someone that you felt like, and I don't want to say it like this, but sometimes you have to think about that. Someone that's better than you. We often cut corners. We often don't go to our full potential. We often aren't leaders when it comes to living our own life because we feel like there's somebody else better to do the job. You are the best to do the job. You need to have courageous leadership. You need to stop cutting corners. You need to stop quitting because you feel like, okay, nobody's going to notice. You're going to notice in your life. And that's one of the things that you have to have. You have to have courageous leadership when it comes to doing these things, when it comes to playing the infinite game. You have to be willing to do the things that you will put a person on a pedestal for doing. So think about that when you're oftentimes trying to cut corners and not finish and cut stuff early and not do what you're supposed to do. Maybe you're not playing the infinite game. Maybe you're playing the finite game. And that's why it's not working. The next one is building trusting teams. And this one is for yourself. I think you need to build a mental environment for yourself where you feel safe. I think a lot of people often don't notice it's hard for them to stay in the game. It's hard for them to keep going because you've created a toxic mental environment for yourself. Anytime you do something wrong, anytime you fall off, anytime you do something dumb, you convince yourself that this is a reason why you shouldn't be doing this thing. This is actually a example of why you shouldn't be doing this thing. And I don't think that's right at all. I think very similar to everyone in life, we all make mistakes. Very similar to everyone in life, there are certain things that we're good at and that we're not good at. There are certain times where we're up and then we fall down. Going back to the Netflix and the Blockbuster example, the reason why Netflix was able to keep going, and there have been companies who've gotten bigger than them, smaller than whatever the case may be, is because they were not trying to be the winner. They were just trying to go for their just cause, and their just cause was to entertain people. And I think sometimes too, when you're in the mindset of, oh, what if I'm wrong? And what if I fail? And what if this? And what if that? What you're really telling yourself is, what if I'm not a winner? You're really telling yourself, I can only do this thing if I'm the winner. And I want to tell you, you're never going to always be the winner. So you might as well not even do this thing. Because you might be the winner for 1 day, 1 year, even 1 decade, but eventually somebody's going to overlap you. Eventually somebody's going to do better than you. And what are you going to do? Look behind? A lot of people don't even notice how much time, energy, resources they waste looking behind. What is somebody else doing? Oh, somebody else got more followers than me? Oh, somebody else got more likes than me? Oh, somebody else making more money than me? Didn't you work to get here? Didn't you strive to get here? So why are you trying to look back and look at what everybody else doing? That's messing you up. You can't look front and back at the same time. So you need to be focused and you need to build a mental environment for yourself where it's not toxic, where it's healthy, where you can say, hey, I didn't understand this. Hey, I messed up on this. Hey, I wasn't the best at doing this. And that is okay. But stop beating yourself down so much. Stop feeling like you're worthless. Stop feeling like these are examples and these are representations why you can't go after your goal and you shouldn't keep going. No, these are examples and representations that you are human and we all make mistakes. So keep going. Now, next one might be a little bit controversial, but it's to have a worthy rival. And I think this one is very imperative, but I think it's also imperative to understand the difference between a rival and competition. Competition talks about the finite game. Competition is someone that you are trying to beat. You're in competition with that individual. A rival shows their strengths, show your weaknesses. And I think this is something that's imperative to have in a healthy way. And it's actually been scientifically proven when you have rivals, individuals are more likely to produce better results and actually stay in things longer because they're looking at another individual who have strengths of things that they want to acquire and things that they want to do. And it's able to show them things that they can improve upon. And I've even used this example before too. Like if you've watched my content from the beginning, you've seen the different kinds of transitions of backgrounds I've had. And even for example, this background of having like the bookshelf and all these other things, I got this from another creator. I was like, I want to upgrade my content. I want my content to look a little bit more clean and a little bit more sleek. So I got it from her and she was a rival for me. Now, do I still want the best for her? Yes. Do I want her channel to grow and flourish? Yes. Because also while that individual's channel is growing and flourishing, I can see weak spots for myself. Learning how to create content came so much from learning how other people create content. And it's not saying that you're copying someone and you're imitating someone, but just learning what are other people good at? What are other people enjoying, right? This is something that you want to do. This is a game that you want to play. But if you look at people like competition, you only trying to step on people. Very much so, going back to the whole Netflix or Blockbuster thing. Netflix looked at Blockbuster like a rival. Blockbuster looked at Netflix like competition. And that's what messed them up. But it just shows you where in life you're weak. But you can use this for any game that you want to play in life. Even in the relationship game, if you want to play that for the infinite game. Like if your spouse or the person that you're with is doing nice things for you, that should make you kind of feel like, dang, you know what? This person did this nice for me, this nice for me. I gotta do something nice for them. Like they've just been showing me how much they appreciate me and they this and they that. Doesn't that make you want to do more? When you with somebody that does nice things for you, even if you have a friendship, if you're friends with individuals that you feel like uplift you and they're always there for you, doesn't that make you want to reciprocate that? Yes, that's a little bit of a rivalry. It doesn't have to be a competition kind of thing, but it just, that person's strength sometimes shows you your weakness. And I think that's imperative to have when you are playing the same game as people, though. You have to make sure you both are playing the same game. And the final one, number 5, is to have a flexible playbook. And this one is very imperative because you need to understand there's going to be different variations of what's a winner. There's going to be different variations of growth and stagnancy. And you have to constantly be able to change. And like I said, that's what messed up Blockbuster. They did not have a changeable playbook. They had specific goals, specific rules they had to abide by. And they literally did not see those rules and those playbook that they were looking at was the same reason for their demise. And a lot of people don't see that as well. Once something has worked for you, a lot of people convince themselves that they cannot change what's worked for them. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whatever it can be, sometimes things work for you at that season, at that point that you are in life, and that's okay. But if you are allowing yourself or forcing yourself to stay in a situation that is no longer serving you, if you are forcing yourself to not be able to change your playbook, you are forcing yourself to play a finite game. I have to stick to this. I have to do this thing because this thing is the only way this thing is the only way I can win. But we are not playing a finite game. We are playing a infinite game. So there's no definition of being a winner. You are constantly changing. You are constantly evolving and growing. And the whole goal with this is to do what? Stay in the game the longest. You cannot stay in a changing game if you're playing with the same rules, with the same mindset, with the same things that were happening when you first started playing the game. If you tell yourself, I want to evolve, I want to grow, and I want to do more. So the final one is have a flexible playbook. Now, even explaining those 5 things, there are 2 things I have to mention that if you lose one of these 2 things, no matter how well you do those 5 things, no matter how well you have leadership, no matter how well you have a just cause, all these other things, you will ultimately end up losing the game of being an infinite player. If you lose your will and resources. Now, first and foremost, your will. A lot of times, I think this happens to people when they stay too specific on things, right? You're trying to do a specific thing, it's not working. Or sometimes too, I think this happens when individuals don't evolve, or I think this happens when individuals pick a just cause that isn't just to them anymore. And sometimes it's just a thing of, I just don't have the will to do this thing anymore. I just simply don't care about this thing anymore. And that is one way how you can lose with the infinite game. But another thing too, and I think people don't talk about this enough, is losing resources. Like there are times in life where maybe you don't have the money, maybe you don't have the time, the energy. And I noticed that about myself. Like last year when I first started like my health journey, I was going to Whole Foods. I was getting all these different kind of expensive grocery stores because it was healthier. And literally I ran out of resources to do it. I literally could not afford it anymore because it was so expensive. And so in order to stay inside of the game, I had to, i.e. change my playbook because my resources was depleting when it came to the money category. But those are 2 things you have to constantly monitor and be aware of. Am I losing resources or am I losing will? And I think those are 2 things people don't ask themselves. Like really be honest with yourself. Can I have the resources, the time, the energy, the money, whatever it is to sustain this thing at the rate that I'm going? But also at the same time, do I have the will to keep going? Do I still care about this thing? Am I still as passionate about this thing? Am I still sacrificing for this thing? Or every so often do I catch myself cutting corners, or every so often do I catch myself not being a leader, or do I every so often catch myself really being down on myself and really not picking myself up? And so those are little things that you can pay attention to, but I think those are ultimately what leads to your demise. And even bringing it back to Blockbuster, that's what led to their demise. They literally ran out of resources. They did not have the resources anymore to keep the company going. Now, the major thing I want you to take away from this entire video is how actually to play the game when it comes to finite goals and when it comes to infinite goals. You have to understand finite goals you can only get motivation from and discipline from if you get finite prizes or finite clues. If there is something you specifically want to achieve, the only thing that's going to keep you going is that you can see that you're working towards that thing. If you are trying to lose 10 pounds, the only thing that's going to keep you going is consistently seeing that you are getting slimmer and that you are getting weight. The idea, the saying of, oh, I feel myself getting stronger and I feel, those sometimes are not enough. You are going to need hard sometime proof of finite clues or finite prizes, and that is what's going to keep you in the game if you are playing the finite game. If you are playing the infinite game, playing the game itself is what's going to keep you in the game. When it comes to making content, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I much rather prefer watching the videos, reading the books, organizing the content than actually shooting the content. I know that it has to be done, but I enjoy playing the game so much more sometimes than actually putting out the thing. And so you have to fall in love with playing the game. That is what's going to bring you your discipline. That is what's going to bring you your motivation, the game itself. And that's how you know it is a finite game that you're playing. But another thing too, I do not want you to get confused with long-term and short-term goals. A lot of people may think, oh, well, a finite goal must be a short-term goal and an infinite goal must be a long-term goal. No. Long-term and short-term goals are still finite goals. Whether it's something going to take you 5 months, 5 years, 50 years, 10 years, there's still a specific clear end goal, a reason why you're doing this thing. So that is still a finite goal, no matter how long it takes you. An infinite goal does not have a stopping point. This is something you're going to keep doing, you're going to keep going after. Finite goals have a why. I'm going back to school because I want to make more money. I'm getting healthier because I want to blank achieve this thing. Infinite goals have a cause. There's a bigger thing sometimes outside of me. There's a bigger reason why I'm doing this. I'm going to consistently and continuously keep doing this thing. So that's something I also want to say, because I think some people may get confused with that, but they're not long-term or short-term goals. No matter how long a goal takes, that is still a finite goal. Thank y'all so much for watching my video. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and tell me how you enjoyed it. And of course, to go below and sign up to follow my Pinterest, my TikTok, and listen to my podcast, because I do upload episodes on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all those things. Thank y'all and have a great one.